7:40, of course, Maximus Dan, when he was known as Maximus Dan, I think he's now known as MX Prime, and in the time, of course, of going to the World Cup 2006 and that unforgettable playoff with Bahrain in November of 2015 and Dennis Lawrence's header and all of that. Well, that seems so long ago now, because now, while we were supposed to have spoken to Cindy Duke, Dr. Cindy Duke, a virologist based in Las Vegas in the USA, but unfortunately she had to head off to deal with a patient, and that must be the priority. We fully understand that. What about the virus that is impacting Trinidad and Tobago football? And to make sense of where we are right now, we're chatting now with Lasana Liburd, editor, the main man at Wired868.com, probably the most experienced football reporter we have in Trinidad and Tobago, given his global expertise. But we want to bring it right home, Lasana. Thanks very much for making yourself available at very short notice to chat with us this morning. We see in the back page of the Express, as reported by Ricky Ramdas, that the High Court has granted an injunction by the United TTFA to block the holding of that emergency general meeting today. Good morning to you. What does that mean? What happens next?
Hi, good morning, Fazeer. It means that FIFA would not be able to say, before the Congress that the TTFA has at least distanced itself from the court case being waged right now, led by TTFA President William Wallace, much less have the case withdrawn completely in time for the deadline set by Infantino. That's not going to be met by Trinidad and Tobago right now.
And the consequences that will flow from that, is it automatic that Trinidad and Tobago will face some sort of sanction for that FIFA Congress come Friday?
It isn't automatic, but Infantino, of course, has promised this. We know that although it's unprecedented, it's uncharted waters for Trinidad and Tobago, but it's not at all for FIFA. FIFA has promised, you could almost say revenge, for William Wallace and his officers for standing in their way. And I guess now it's over to Infantino and his team to decide what happens.
And in relation to that, before we get your perspective on how this entire matter is being handled, as best as you understand it, whatever sanction, is it a sanction that could last for months, for years, or could be dropped as soon as, if it happens, the United TTFA were to drop their legal matter, even if sanctions were... What I'm trying to say essentially, Lasana, if Friday morning the FIFA Congress says the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association is suspended until they remove this legal matter, if it is dropped the next day, will FIFA drop the suspension?
This is a matter that has to be voted on by the membership, the general membership, which of course meets once a year, right? It's funny how FIFA operates, because of course you have the Bureau of the Council that could meet any time and make a decision that has to be ratified, by the members. And there's actually an interesting legal point in terms of if the Bureau by itself could let us back in and we're back in, or if it'll have to go to the Congress first. So to be honest, that still needs to be clarified. Usually though, suspensions go for anything from 1 to 2 years, and usually you see associations stay out that long. As it happened to Mexico would have been a punishment at the time. Guatemala served their full suspension. So it may be that we're talking a year or two, and we'll serve the entire thing. Unprecedented again for us.
Absolutely. And in the case of Mexico, and I think many people would be aware of it because that was in the time of the 1989 World Cup qualifying campaign. Mexico was suspended because they used overage players in age group competition, which is a different thing to what is happening here right now. Where do you see this going? Because the United TTFA up to this time are holding firm. Others hold the view that, look, if it is the will of the TTFA members that you don't go through with this, that they should withdraw it. What is your sense of this?
Yes, the Constitution says that 2/3 of the TTFA membership essentially is enough to impose its will on the president. They haven't demonstrated that there are 2/3 of the membership against the president yet, William Wallace. If they do so, in some sort of clear manner, then Wallace, to me, would no longer have the moral authority to continue in this, although he has the legal authority. That's not to say if the whole thing is right or wrong, of course, but 2/3 is the marker generally by the Constitution, and without that, he wouldn't have the support of his members at all.
But hasn't this injunction prevented that from happening? If there were to be the emergency general meeting and more than 2/3 or 2/3 were to make clear their position, then William Wallace would have to accede to that, and therefore this injunction has prevented that from happening.
You could say that, yes. On the other hand, of course, they didn't go about holding the AGM in the right way, and if they had done so, then the court wouldn't have stepped in. I think this entire thing has been made that much more complicated by Infantino and FIFA, because they continue this myth that Wallace was removed in March. And okay, as far as FIFA is concerned, Wallace is done, but we know there's no doubt that as far as the High Court is concerned, as far as First Citizens Bank is concerned, legally speaking, the president hasn't been moved. And if Infantino and FIFA haven't completely muddled the situation to the point that the football membership wasn't sure how to proceed, then it might very well be that Wallace may have already been history, or that the membership may have already imposed itself on him long ago. They simply didn't know how to do it, because FIFA kept insisting that the normalization committee is in charge. So that's where they send the petition to, instead of to the TTFA board and Wallace.
And I know you've been following this very closely. It's your job, of course, Lasana, to follow this thing. But at the end of the day, notwithstanding the legal arguments and the validity on both sides, or the matters of interpretation and so on, is this a fight worth carrying through by William Wallace and United TTFA, given the potential consequences to Trinidad and Tobago football? Is this something really worth pursuing?
Well, that's a difficult question, right? The reality is, as we know, Trinidad and Tobago football has been on a slide for a while, but I would say emphatically so over the last 4 or 5 years, which would be under the term David John Williams. You're talking about our debt tripling. You're talking about our team dropping over 50 spots in the FIFA ranking. So it's not an automatic case of we ditch Wallace and we go with FIFA and things will be on the up. You look at the consequences, let's say, of normalization. The reality is our Trinidad and Tobago clubs have been able to play in CONCACAF or FIFA tournament for 2 years anyway, because the TTFA under John Williams, haven't seen about the licensing requirements. Teams haven't been traveling and so on, so it's really messy, because it's really not a case of us being able to say that, under FIFA, everything will be fine. Things haven't been fine.
Well, let me not be a hypocrite by asking you your position and not stating mine, because I've stated in the last column I did in the Express a couple Sundays ago that I believe that this is a matter worth fighting for United TTFA because of the issue of the principle of it. But having said that, I don't have a son playing football. I don't have a grandson playing football. I don't have a grandson or granddaughter or son or daughter or whatever playing football. So it could be argued that it's easy for me to say that because I don't have a direct stake. Of course, we have the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, making it clear that his son has moved past Trinidad and Tobago football and doesn't need this situation. And he's made his position clear. Is it therefore easy for William Wallace, Keith Localoy, and so on, who've all had their time enjoying the fruits of being involved with football, for them to stand on principle, which may be right, but the consequences will affect too many young people who have no stake, who have a lot of stake as far as football, but who will be the unwilling victims of pursuing what many may believe to be right?
I agree with that. It's a lot more difficult for not only the players, the club owners, and the people that have sort of a stake in the game. It will be a lot more difficult for them to consider a year or 2 years out. At the same time, we have to know that this isn't just a sweat we're talking about. And sometimes when I hear a person saying, well, we won't be able to play football in this thing, and is TTFA and wearing the red, black, and white, is it simply reduce that sweat? And people want to know, hey, we need to be able to sweat for the next 2 years, and I think it's quite a bit more serious than that. I think the issue goes further than that as well, because William Wallace's administration has been far from perfect too, on all sides, which makes the whole thing, like I said, murkier either which way you go. But I agree with you that football isn't just a sweat,
Indeed, and yes, a lot of issues, the terms and conditions of Terry Fennick and the styrofoam Peter Miller, who keeps popping up all over the place when there are issues related to football and football administration and so on. But in light of all of these issues, and many people have again offered the perspective that while they might agree in principle with the William Wallace team, that taking on FIFA is a fight that you can't win. That no nation, correct me if I'm wrong, has taken on FIFA in this manner and prevailed, or even set a precedent where others were ready to come. Even Keith Lookloy, we were talking to, was it last week, who said other jurisdictions saying, well, boy, we're backing you here, but you know how it is. That you know how it is, because you don't want to be seen to be standing up against FIFA. So what's the point?
Yes. Well, like I said, the only thing you could point to really is principle. Noble Philip did a nice column for us on the weekend for Wireless 68, pointing out that in his opinion, the only way the TTFA would stand a chance here would be through a collaboration with other countries. It would be absolutely the only way to give FIFA something really to consider. It's not that the United TTFA didn't try that, they did, but of course they failed, It is true that it seems to be an unwinnable fight, and either which way you look at it, it's not a good situation for Trinidad and Tobago football. It isn't.
And in the last couple of minutes that we have, Lasana, if it is that we were to face some sort of sanction, rather than weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth that might take place and loss of finance and revenue for the game, could it actually be getting to the very bottom of the barrel where Trinidad and Tobago football can rebuild? Is that unrealistic? Because the argument would be no FIFA money, no sponsorship money, the game could die in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, well, we have seen teams rebound from this. Guyana themselves went through a normalization committee a few years ago, and of course they got the better of us at the Gold Cup last year. And it was a draw, but they finished higher than we did in the group, just for instance. It's not the end of the road, but we're still a long way from the upward move, the upward trend that we'd like to see, right? We haven't, a lot of persons, myself included, hope that the change in the administration last November would have given us the upward momentum that we would like. Maybe we saw a little bit of that on the field, when the team got to the CONCACAF quarterfinals. But off the field, we haven't at all seen the improvements that we're looking for. Will it happen under William Wallace? I have my doubts about that too. But at least it will force the football stakeholders to kind of take note and decide what they want for themselves, And I think that going to FIFA right now is sort of the easy decision. Yes, we'll be able to play football, but I don't think it would improve things at all on or off the field.
Lasana Liburd, thank you very much for taking the time, again, at short notice to offer your perspective as we continue to get some sense as to what could happen next for football in Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks very much again, Lasana.
Sure, no problem.
Lasana Liburd of Wired868.com.